New developments in a story that's gained national attention since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, but is now under serious scrutiny. It's the horrific story of a 10-year-old rape victim who was allegedly forced to travel across state lines from Ohio to Indiana to obtain an abortion. It first appeared in the Indianapolis Star on July 1st, and it cites a single source, a doctor. Quote, Dr. Caitlin Bernard, an Indianapolis obstetrician gynecologist, took a call from a colleague, a child abuse doctor in Ohio. Now this doctor had a 10-year-old patient in the office who was 6 weeks and 3 days pregnant. Could Bernard help? Indiana lawmakers are poised to further restrict or ban abortion in mere weeks. But for now, the procedure still is legal here. And so the girl soon was on her way to Indiana to Bernard's care. Outrage quickly swept across media outlets.
It is hard to imagine anything more cruel, more disturbing than forcing a child, a 10-year-old still playing with fidget toys and tablets, to carry her father or her brother's child to term, or forcing her to travel across state lines for an abortion. And yet, here we are.
Ohio has outlawed abortion after 6 weeks. So the child will now have to travel to Indiana to get the procedure. And this case is putting the spotlight on America post Roe v. Wade.
A 10-year-old rape victim, that is a child.
Remember, this was based on a single source. Then President Biden, well, he pushed the story on Friday as he raged against Ohio's restrictive abortion law without seeking any evidence that the story was even true.
This isn't some imagined horror. It's already happening. Just last week, it was reported that a 10-year-old girl was a rape victim in Ohio. 10 years old. And she was forced to have to travel out of the state to Indiana to seek to terminate the presidency. Imagine being that little girl. I'm serious. Just imagine being that little girl, 10 years old.
Now, Ohio's Attorney General David Yost says that he hasn't heard a single thing about the case.
We have regular contact with prosecutors and local police and sheriffs. Not a whisper anywhere. My office runs the state crime lab. Any case like this, you're going to have a rape kit, you're going to have biological evidence, and you would be looking for DNA. There is no case request for analysis that looks anything like this.
So Kellyanne, the Washington Post fact checker, woke up from his slumber and decided to fact check this one. Under Ohio law, a physician, as a mandated reporter under Ohio Revised Code 2151421, would be required to report any known case of suspected physical, sexual, or emotional abuse or neglect of a child. They contacted child service agencies across Ohio. Nothing. Attorney General, you just heard him. Nothing.
Well, I certainly hope it's not true, because the idea that it is so horrifying to each and every one of us. I think that's completely nonpartisan, Kaylee. At the same time, this woman, this one doctor who is kind of like an abortion pundit, you know, she's always available for a quote, for an appearance. I don't know when she has time to do these abortions, but she has gone dark. We haven't heard from her. And if she's a single source, we all demand answers. And there's no question that immediately we all thought about the 10-year-old. But the idea that this could, we don't know the facts, but the idea that this could, according to the Attorney General of Ohio, be right up there with Russia collusion, Nick Sandmann, CNN had to settle a $275 million lawsuit with him. Go look him up, everybody. Jussie Smollett. It's too rich to verify. It's just too great. We can get kicks and clicks. So we're going to do this. If they really cared, if the White House really cared about this 10-year-old, they would get on the phone with Ohio quietly, not in front of a podium and the press corps. They would say, "How can we help? Is justice being served? We're worried about this 10-year-old girl."
Yeah, and where's the perpetrator? I mean, let's find him.
That's an excellent question. And if there were an investigation going on through the Ohio Attorney General's office, you might get some answers on that. But like he said, there's no biological rape kit. There's nothing to this case that he can find. And you know he's looking, right? Because he's telling us that. That was an excellent interview by Jesse, by the way. The other question, though, that I would have is, when are we going to put some pressure on the Indianapolis Star?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't need to know who your sources are. I need to know that you have them. I need to know that you have some evidence or access to evidence that this actually happened, because right now your misreporting or your disinformation potentially is taking down the president, because the president's people weren't smart enough to figure this out on their own, that they needed more than one source before he would repeat it. And you can't back off and say, oh, he was ad-libbing. They clean up on aisle 7 so much. Everybody ought to be ready with a mop, a broom, and a catch-all, right? I mean, come on. So if they cared, as Kellyanne said, if they cared about this and that 10-year-old, they could at least say, you know what? We have verified the story. We are working to help that family, that sort of thing. But because they haven't come out and said that, they don't know where this came from either. I mean, we know that potentially it's not true.
Yeah, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about this. Have you independently verified the story? She didn't answer the question.
Yeah, and you know, not having evidence that it's not true is not evidence that it is true. And that's sort of where the media has gone today. And not to be glib about it, but you know, this is what you get from people who look at Hispanic voters and see them all as tacos or something like that. Everyone, everything, there is no situation that these people are not willing to exploit. And you know, nothing rivals the atrocity of a 10-year-old rape victim. But the idea that you would have politicians in America trying to exploit a story like this and make up a story like this in order to advance their own sick agenda tells you they're not serious about the issue, and they're not serious about the people who are affected by the issue. And you know, I think it sort of discredits them from the field of decent debate about it.
Yeah. Emily, to the point of the Indianapolis Star, Washington Post, there's no indication that the newspaper made other attempts to confirm her account. The story's lead reporter, you made this point during break, Sherry Rudavesky, did not respond to a query asking whether additional sourcing was obtained. And the single source said to the Washington Post, thank you for reaching out. I'm sorry, but I don't have any information to share. So just dark.
Yeah, and that's against the backdrop of their code of ethics, which also includes we use confidential sources, sole sources, as the sole basis for published information only as a last resort and under specific procedures that best serve the public's right to know. Well, that goes to what you were saying, where they have deemed that the public's right to know is folded in with their agenda. Take it from me, because my wheelhouse was criminal law as an attorney. There's no shortage of 10-year-old rape victims. There's victims from infants through the elderly, both genders. There is more than you can count. There are so many monsters out there. So for me, what I find so deeply offensive is that they had to make up a fake one. There's actually so many, there are countless real ones that I would love for them to use as advocacy for law and order, for actually commitment to prosecutions, to finding the perpetrator. But the fact that this alleged situation was created, and that was to serve the public's right to know, to further their position on abortion by a sort of sensationalist physician now that has now gone dark with zero acknowledgement of the perp and the victim, and so much more components of this that real people have dedicated their careers and their dramatic efforts to on a daily basis, that they think we're that simple, that they've reduced us, oh, you're going to eat this up, you're not going to ask any questions, and it's going to be really good for your talking point, and then it gets amplified. It's horrifying. Americans know better than that. We're smarter than that, and we are more honorable than that.
Amen. And from inside the party, you might say, the Washington Post flags it as hockey puck.
Yes.
Right? I mean, almost
and
immediately.
Snopes is a left-wing fact checker. They said they can't verify it. And look, I hope it's not true because the facts are so horrifying.
We all hope it's not true.
But, you know, my goodness.
I hope it's not true.
But I hope they tell us the truth.
Yeah, they're calling it the single source story that went viral around the world and made it into the president's talking points because they don't fact check themselves.